Hello there, greetings and welcome back to another review. So today we're going to be having a look at the ultra violent story of Riki, but at the same time the ultra fun movie. I've got two versions of it here, one by 88 Films. This one I think medium rare, I think released that one. So I've always known it as Story of Riki, but its official full title is Riki-Oh, the story of Riki. I remember this one of them films back in the VHS era. It was one of them movies like you just had to see, because the first time you see it, or at least I saw it, I just couldn't believe what I was watching. It was just, it's so, well, we're getting into it today, like why this film just is what it is. And it's one of these movies, you have to see it. You've got to see this movie. There is this guy punching through people's heads and guts and being ripped out, and everything you can think of happens. So unfortunately it took me a bit of a while to get round to seeing this movie. I must have seen it probably in the late 90s, but when I did, because I remember reading it in various different Hong Kong magazines and books, and like, you've got to see this movie, it's like the most violent film ever made, and it didn't disappoint on that basis. So it just didn't disappoint. Made back in 1991, starring Siu-wong, who you probably all remember from like the Ip Man movies. Also here we have Mei-sheng, who you also remember probably from Magnificent Butcher as well. Here he plays sort of the sadistic assistant warden and pretty much steals the show. We have Yukari Oshima here as well. The film is loosely based on the manga of the same name. This is one of them movies that is so laughably silly. Like, it is so laughably, stupidly silly with the violence and the over-the-top what is happening with, like I say, heads being knocked off and God knows what else. But it's so laughably silly. You can't take the violence seriously in this movie. It just, in the way it's done, it's sort of like a certain tongue-in-cheek and that classic Hong Kong style. Obviously, because of the highly unrealistic violence, there's a sort of camp factor with this movie that plays throughout as the movie goes along. The acting, the setting, etc. It was always going to be a cult movie, and rightly so. Much like something Sam Raimi would have done, or in like an early Peter Jackson. If you remember like vehicles like from Peter Jackson, like Brain Dead as well. It's so balls to the wall, insane, like so much blood and things like that happening that you can't, it's not meant to be taken seriously because it's so over the top. You just can't help but go with it and enjoy the movie for the wacky, zany, crazy, ultra violent, sadistic spectacle that this film is. Directed by Nai-choi, who also directed Seventh Curse, I reviewed elsewhere on my channel way back. I've never read the original manga, so I can't really compare it to the source material, so you will have to forgive me on that front. But I've been told I think the film does a fantastic job in keeping what the essence of Riki-Oh is all about, much in the same way sort of the Lone Wolf and Cub movies did. Also, the film just keeps going along. You never know what is going to happen next, who is next to get their head punched through, and God knows what else. And and the blood is in there. It's for all its glory for everyone to see. This is over the edge cinema at its finest, and in that 90 minutes, anything can happen, and it actually does in the 90 minutes runtime of this movie. This was at the time when sort of Golden Harvest were not just thinking about what could sell seats locally, but more what could international audiences like to see. Some people out there will say it's the most stupidest violent thing they've ever seen, whilst the rest of us will enjoy the gory, ultra violent, campy cartoon over the top movie that this is trying to be. So strap yourselves in and let's get into the story of Riki. So we start with this prison bus approaching in prison, oddly enough. So the year is 2001, and we learn that prisoners have become have become like sort of franchise businesses. It's sort of like one of them 80s Hollywood sci-fi movies in terms of the setup. If you think along the lines, if you remember like The Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger, or Escape from New York with Kurt Russell. So what makes this film campy is the prison is just a great set. The prison itself, where most of the action takes place, it is just a great big set, and the film is no worse for that, which I think it adds to the film so much. We get introduced to the new inmates. Not really it matters when we get introduced to the inmates. It really doesn't matter, apart from Riki, played by Siu-wong, who is sentenced for manslaughter and assault, and he has like bullet souvenirs in his body. It's worth pointing out at this point that Riki the character of Riki is virtually indestructible, right? He just can't be hurt, and even if whatever happens to him, it doesn't affect him at all. So the warden, played by Ho-Ka-Hoi, is the most powerful guy in the prison, and the whole place is like divided into 4 sections: north, south, east, and west, respectively, and it's run by the Gang of Four. Does anybody remember that band, the Gang of Four? Does anybody out there remember the Gang of Four? So this old man gets his face sort of sliced by a group of the inmates after he made it like a model train for his kid. Riki trips up their leader, and his face gets impaled onto a piece of wood with loads of nails in it, which is edited so well. It's brilliantly edited together, and the editing in this movie with like a lot of the props and things they use when all the violent stuff happens, it's really, as I say, it's really well done. I mean, it's always a dull or whatever it may be, but when it's done the way it's done here, it just, it's just fantastically done. It just looks so awesome. I mean, nails right through the face. I mean, come on. This guy, it just comes out of nowhere. The old man sort of hangs himself as they don't grant his probation. So Riki, out of his cell, randomly gives the old man his toy back as he is like on the stretcher. That happens. I mean, that happens a lot too in this movie. Like suddenly Riki will be out of his cell, just like sort of wandering around, walking around the courtyard. And for a prison, they don't really seem to spend a lot of time. Well, Riki doesn't especially spend a lot of time in his cell. So Mad Dragon, this big huge hulking inmate, has been let out to deal with Riki in the shower. So naturally Riki, just punches through him basically and into his stomach, spilling his guts, and does the same as well to the North Wing captain. So I say this film doesn't hold back, but as I say, it's done with a tongue-in-cheek sense of style and the way it's shot. You just can't help but smile. It looks a bit dated now, of course it does, but there was a reason. I mentioned why a film like this, like along with like Sam Raimi's Evil Dead, why they do become classics, because they're so sort of just balls to the wall, doesn't care, let's just have that happen, and as I say, the film is no worse for that. So then we have a flashback where we meet Uncle Ghost, and has known Riki since he was young, and says he has always had super strength and wants him to learn Qigong, I think. If I say any names wrong, like with any time I'm reviewing a Hong Kong movie, then you please forgive me. The whole technique basically involves them breaking and smashing headstones in a graveyard. Then we meet the assistant warden, Cyclops as he's known, played by Mei-sheng, eating a very rare steak with loads of blood, and he's got like his double hook hand, and he's got shelves of pornography behind him in his office, not to mention his false eye as well they've got going on. So he threatens Riki and actually puts his hook through his hand. Riki spits in his face and tells him to keep his nose out of his affairs after Cyclops opened one of Riki's letters that was sent to him. Then get another flashback of him and his girlfriend Ying flying a remote controlled plane, showing how happy they were and they had better times, and that they were in love and they were a couple and things like that. So we also have Philip Kwok here in a small cameo role, who you probably mostly remember from like the Venom movies and things like that, who wants to kill one of the prisoners for being a squealer on the old man. Hai, the North Wing inmate in charge, puts a blade through Kwok's face for disrespecting him, and Cyclops tells him to make an example of Riki. So basically, Riki, like I mentioned, Riki is indestructible. Like the powers that be, the people in charge, no matter what. I mean, the guy, like I say, when he went into his office, he puts a hook right through his hand. Doesn't affect Riki at all. In the next shot, he's totally fine. So over the top, like he has quite. I mean, when he takes off Philip Kwok, he has Philip Kwok tied to this massive crucifix, right, in the courtyard. And I love how they assembled this giant crucifix just to put Philip Kwok on. Which I thought, just to annoy Riki. Not that he even knew the guy or anything like that. So he fights Hai, Oscar, who cuts into Riki's arm, who then goes to slap him so hard in the back of the head that his eyes pop out. And this is probably the scene the most, here is when the most people remember from this movie, when the guy tries to kill himself with his sword and ends up using like his own guts and intestines and innards to like sort of strangle Riki. I think that's what a lot of people mainly remember from this movie. I mean, it's just brilliant. It's wonderfully done. Riki punches him so hard it kills him. We also get, even here, we get an X-ray shot, which I think was in the manga, which loads of people use now. It's in like video games like Mortal Kombat. Did they do X-ray? I think they did X-ray shots in Romeo Must Die with Jet Li. I swear there's like an X-ray shot at the end as that. It's been used loads of times in movies. So we meet the heads of the different wings after the prisoners sort of begin to rebel. One of them at one stage clomping a guy's head so hard with 2 hands that it actually explodes. Riki meets Oscar's godson, who has had his tongue cut out, and Riki gives him his flute, which he keeps playing. We find out the godson has like poppy leaves on him. So his gang wants to kill Riki after showing high, like with his skin ripped off and pinned to the wall. That is one way to make sure the person means that business. Once like the guy gets the poppy off, like I say, skin's ripped off and pinned to the wall. They want him to like kill Riki, but so he says no, and like that's what they do to him. He won't kill Riki, so they slice his face off and kill him by leaving him in the courtyard with his skin peeled off and things like that. And it does say it's so laughably over the top, this movie, that it's just, I've seen it a number of times now. It doesn't necessarily, because nowadays films are so violent anyway. Video games are more violent now. Just every films are just generally, I think, more violent than they've ever been now. But at the time, I think that, like I say, this was like, you'd never seen anything like this, sort of, especially sort of from Hong Kong type of film, and this was like, so I think even when it came out, it's one of them movies that you already knew it was going to be a cult classic, it was going to be a cult favourite of many people. So they slice his face off and kill him by leaving him in the courtyard with all his skin peeled off. Riki naturally annoyed at this point about this. Riki takes every death that happens and everybody that gets hurt so personally. Like, Riki takes it upon himself, like, that's not on, right? Riki sets fire to their opium grow and wants to fight Wong Chun, Yukari or Oshima's character. And we have some nice fights and kung fu sequences here throughout the movie. The wing leaders turn up and the big guy takes Riki back to his cell after they were going to be shot on sight. And they sort of get locked in this cell, which actually starts filling with cement for some reason. Riki jumps out through the door but hardens because of the cement. All the while this is going on, the main warden returns, and I love the comedy. There is comedy injected into this movie. It's not just straight. Of course, with what's happening, there has to be. It is done in like a light-hearted tone, and they inject it with like. I love where they're sort of everybody's waiting for him to turn up, but they all sort of fall asleep, which I thought was something that it just lightened the movie a little bit. Even a little simple joke like that just took the intensity out of it a little bit. The fact that they did they're all waiting for him and then they all just fall asleep. And this guy's meant to be, you do not annoy this guy, you do not do anything out of place or anything wrong. But they all fall asleep waiting for him. So on arrival, after his son trips on the carpet that was laid out for the chief warden, he puts his cane through one of the inmates' eyes for not rolling it out correctly. He finds out that Riki set fire to the opium and goes to visit him, and he breaks free of the cement. He grabs the warden, then out of nowhere, Tarzan, who's the big guy, comes through the wall. He just smashes through the wall. Riki ends up punching him so hard through the jaw that it actually comes out through his mouth. I can't praise the effects in this movie enough. You give me effects like this over CGI any day. Effects like this, where it's practical, whether it's puppets, whatever it may be, dolls, whatever, prosthetics, you name it, I much prefer this over CGI any day. I can't praise the effects in this movie enough. Then he punches through his hands and breaks his fingers off. Not only that, we even have a ceiling coming down that is going to crush Riki. All the while the warden is like shocking him with volts. Riki jumps out and Tarzan gets crushed. Riki falls through a hole in the floor and the warden wants all the inmates to start burying Riki alive, or they get shot, and he has to survive like 7 days with an oxygen tube under the ground. And if he does, the warden says he will be a free man. So he's putting Riki in this sort of under the ground and seeing if he can survive. There's no reason whatsoever to trust this guy, though. Like, there's no reason why this guy would keep his promise and what he's saying. I wouldn't trust him. No way. So then we have like another flashback with his girlfriend Singh catching some drug dealers shooting up, gets taken by them, and then she just runs out. She gets taken by these guys, right? She witnesses some guys shooting up, then she gets taken by them, then she runs out hysterically and just jumps off the building, right? She just runs off she doesn't even actually jump off the roof. She just sort of runs off the roof. and sort of kills herself. Not only is this done so quick, but it's obviously a doll, and it's just, well, it is what it is, you know. Riki finds the guy, breaks his leg, punches through his head, and this scene also explains where Riki got the bullets in his chest from. So they do give a bit of backstory to the Riki and how he got the bullets that were in his chest. So they dig Riki out of the ground where he's been, who is still alive, and as I say, I mean, this guy can just take anything, right? Riki-Oh can just take anything. They can make him eat razor blades. They make him eat razor blades and want to know where he disappeared to for 2 years in the past, which is a common question that keeps coming up in this movie. Like, they keep asking him, like, where were you for them 2 years? Where were you? So after coming into his cell, Riki punches one of the snitch inmates' heads off. You begin to see a theme here with what's happening with what Riki does. It's usually, more often than not, they'll get their head punched off or their head punched through. It's one or the two, which is what Riki's sort of move is. He punches Cyclops, and the inmates sort of stab him and chops his arm off. So a riot ensues with the prisoners rebelling. Riki finds the warden in the kitchen, who has just used this meat grinder to sort of shred a guy's arm as well. There's no real plot to the movie, and there's definitely not a moral message, as you probably may have guessed. Warden shoots another warden with like an elephant gun, and he blows up at one point. Riki chops off Wong Chun's legs. Riki now has to fight like the main warden, right? And this is where the film just goes. It was already over the top anyway, but the ending, he has like a serious, like, Incredible Hulk transformation, and stuff like this could only happen in like a Hong Kong movie, or like I say, like a manga comic book and things like that. Is it silly? Yes. Is it wacky? Yes. Is it entertaining? Definitely. The first time I saw this, I was like, what on earth is going on, right? Because this guy just completely changes, and it just becomes so laughable. If nobody had ever seen like sort of a Hong Kong movie, and you started them off with sort of like story of Riki, they're going to be in for one hell of a waking up call in terms of like this movie. So he punches through his stomach, chest and legs, and then stuffs him into a food blender, and he gets shredded, right? This guy gets shredded. I mean, seriously shredded after he goes through the food blender. Blood everywhere, even goes as far as to show us the meat coming out as well. After this, Riki punches down the prison wall. I mean, he punches down the prison wall, right, and just sort of walks off. That's how the film ends. But you think, why didn't you just do that anyway? Why did you endure all this if that's what you just did anyway? So he walks out with the other inmates sort of cheering his name, and thus concludes story of Riki. But just go check it out. I can't do it justice with like sort of a short review, because there's so much to say about it. But it's mad, it's bonkers, it's silly, it's fun, it's got everything in there. As I say, you just name it, you've got it. It's not a kung fu film as such, and so there is like some kung fu in the movie, but the main theme of the movie is just, like I say, for shock value, for the over top violence and the gore, and it's just everything. Now, there was a sequel, I believe. I think it was made in 2005. I think there was a sequel to this movie, which I've never seen, but if any of you have, again, I think Siu-wong, I think he is in that one as well, again, as Riki. But if you have seen the sequel, just let me know, because I've never seen it myself, if it's as good as the first movie, what the film's like. But I have to say, if you have seen the second one, let me know. But so over the top, stupid, cartoony, wacky, violent, and just all-round entertaining. So if you enjoyed films like Peter Jackson's Brain Dead, or like I say, Sam Raimi's classic Evil Dead, then you're going to find a lot to enjoy here, as I say, because it's just crazy, it's violent, and above all else, it's just entertaining, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. So thank you very much indeed for watching. Hope you enjoyed the review, and I'll see you soon.
Don't concentrate on the finger, or you will miss all that heavenly glory.